In this video, I'm going to show you how to make an I Spy bag. This is a bag full of polyester pellets and little trinkets that you can give to a child and have them find all the items inside. The back has a pocket for a picture or a list, and you can use a dry erase marker on this vinyl to check off each item as you go. So the tutorial for this is really simple, and let's get started. To get started on your I Spy bag, print out a pattern piece from my website. The link to this pattern template is in the description of this video. And then we're going to use the main piece to cut out 2 layers of fabric from each your lining and main fabric, so 2 each. And then interface with fusible interfacing your 2 main pieces. You're also going to want to use this pattern piece to cut out 2 pieces of tissue paper that'll help us sew the vinyl. And then the vinyl pieces, there's a window vinyl piece that's bigger, so cut that out from vinyl. And then go ahead and cut a back vinyl piece that'll hold our checklist. Some of the supplies you need are polyester pellets. These are called poly pellets. They're like a polyester bead, and a funnel to fill it up with. You can use rice instead, and then you'll need little trinkets. In my blog post, there's a bunch of recommendations for little trinkets, but you can search for slime charms or flat back resin charms to get these little charm things. They are plastic or resin and really cute and fun to kind of move around in the beads. So I'm using about 20. You can use however many you want. And there are some suggestions for sets to buy. We'll need some tape and also a glue stick. There's a few extra supplies in this project that we don't normally use for sewing because of the vinyl. So the vinyl you can find, the clear vinyl, you can find this at the home decor section of most fabric stores. They usually come on big rolls. And another option is using vinyl from a package that you might find at the store. A lot of times sheets come in clear vinyl, and you can recycle that and use that. So I usually save those bags for projects like this. So the first step, after you've cut out all your pieces, I'm gonna put everything aside except for 2 layers, 1 main piece and 1 lining. And then we'll set the other 2 aside. So I'm gonna put these face down, this lining face down on the main piece, so right sides together. And then I'm going to put my pattern piece back on top of it and pin it on. So for these 2 pieces, we're going to cut the main piece. Inside, we're going to cut that front cutout out, so we have a viewing window for the trinkets. So I'm just going to make sure this is in the right spot. And then I like to pin on both sides of this dashed line. We're going to end up cutting the dashed line, but we don't want it to get skewed. So by pinning it on both sides, it'll help keep all our stuff in place. I'm just going to move these aside. And then for this project, we don't need this front cutout, right? So we are going to make sure we don't cut through any of the outside of the window. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little snip in here and get to the side, and then find a place to start cutting on those lines. So I'm trying to keep my layers, including the pattern piece, really together so that I don't skew anything. I'm going to cut into that corner, pivot, and start cutting back on this line. So we don't want to clip into the sides because that will ruin the fabric we need. We're not going to use this fabric in the middle, so you can use that as a scrap or discard it otherwise. So just be careful around the corners. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to take the paper off. but leave the 2 layers together because we're just gonna sew them like that. Since they're already right sides together, I'm gonna remove the pattern piece, but pin this back together. So I have those layers really lined up already. And then we're gonna sew around this window 1/4 inch from the edges inside. After you sew that, we're gonna clip into the corners so we can turn it and get a smooth corner. So just clip right into that edge and then trim into it at an angle. And then we'll do that in every corner. After you've trimmed all the corners and clipped into them, we're gonna turn and press this. So first, start out by using a steam iron to press the lining up towards the seam allowance. So that way the seam allowance will be on the lining side once we turn it all the way in. And this step will help you get nice straight edges. And then finish turning the lining into the inside, and we'll match up the corners and press it again. So this will be the front of our bag, and this is where the viewing window is going to be. So the next step is to flip it back over so that you see your lining, and grab your large vinyl. So this is your window vinyl piece. And I'm gonna kind of center it around that window. And then I'm gonna use my glue stick. This is just a children's school glue stick to glue it on around these edges. So you can even just do the glue first. And this is a trick to hold something like vinyl that you don't want to puncture with a needle or pin. Okay, so I'm going to push it down. I'm going to turn it over and just lightly iron around this window, making sure the edges are straight. And this heat will help the glue dry a little bit. Once you have it kind of secure, just check it. We're going to use one of the pieces of tissue paper on the back. So this vinyl, because it's slick, it might get stuck on our machine as we sew. So to prevent that, we'll put this tissue paper on the back, and then on the top, we will sew around the window with a 1/8 inch from this window. And you'll want to use a Teflon foot on your sewing machine, or use a regular foot and put a piece of tape under the presser foot. That way the metal won't catch on this part. Once you've sewn that, you can trim the threads, and then we have this tissue paper. We just need to peel it off. So you just rip it off and that stitching will stay. And this is just a real easy way to sew with vinyl. And then the next step is we're just going to trim some of this vinyl. I made it bigger than it needs to be because it's easier to sew a piece of vinyl that is larger in case it skews. So we're going to trim this down to about 1/2 inch or less, and that way the trinkets won't get stuck behind here. Since some of our trinkets are small, if they might get stuck in that little spot, and we don't want that. So just trim it down to about 3/8 or 1/2 inch with your scissors. And then we can set this front piece aside for now. So the back, we have 2 full pieces from our main fabric piece. We're going to put them together with the wrong sides together and baste them. So basting is a wide stitch. So you can set your machine to about 5 millimeters. We'll sew around the back at about 1/4 inch. So your back piece is assembled. We just need to add the back vinyl piece. So this will be a pocket to hold the picture or list of your items and also a marker. So you can add a little dry erase marker in this pocket so that you can check off the things as you find them. So I'm gonna put it right here, and then I'm gonna use tape to hold this in place. So my pocket is centered as best I can center it. And then I'm gonna put tape around the edges to hold it. Again, we don't wanna puncture the vinyl, so that's why I'm doing this. And then I'm gonna use my other piece of tissue paper to put it over so that when we sew it, our vinyl is not gonna stick onto our sewing machine. But now I can't see my pocket. So I'm gonna use a pencil or a pen to mark where my pocket is. You can kind of mark the edges with your nail. And then I'm gonna just draw over it so I can find it. Whoops. Probably a pen's not the best idea, but that's what I got. Okay, so there, I know where it is. Now I'm gonna sew lines a little straighter than my pen lines. I'm gonna sew 1/4 or 1/8 inch in from that line. So about 1/4 inch, a little less is fine too. And that's where I'm gonna sew that pocket on. When you've sewed that, we're gonna remove the tissue paper, tear it off, and then also remove that tape. We don't want the tape to be on there too long because it can leave a residue on the bag and it's kind of gross and hard to get off. So take that tape off if you can. You might need to use a little Goo Gone if it gets too stuck. Okay, we are almost done. We have our pocket assembled. We have our display window on the front. So what we're gonna do now is put these layers together with the outer fabrics matching. So this will be right sides together. Match all those corners and pin it. And then before you sew this, it's important to just check and make sure you've clipped all your threads because you can see into this bag. If you have threads, you're gonna be able to see them through the pellets. And then we're gonna sew around this outside edge with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and we're gonna leave about 3 inches open on the bottom, and that will be for filling and turning. So go ahead and sew that up. After you've sewn that, clip the corners. Once it's turned, use your iron to press the edges. And if your vinyl is a little bit crinkled, you can also press it with a cloth over the top of it. So just a piece of cotton. So just find an extra piece of cotton or a pressed cloth. You don't want to melt the vinyl, but we can get the crinkles out. And then we're gonna press the opening so that it will look nice when we sew it closed. And then once you have it pressed, we're gonna stitch around the outside edge about 1/8 of an inch from that edge with a sewing machine, back stitching at where the opening starts and stops. Okay, this last step is the most fun. Now we get to fill our bag up. So we are gonna first put in 3 cups of polyester pellets or rice. And I like to use a funnel for this. Sometimes the pellets get stuck, so a little chopstick can help you get those in. Once all your pellets are in, we can put the trinkets in. But before you do that, make sure you have taken a picture of everything that's going in or written it down. So I just took a picture. You can do this with your phone and then print it out with your home computer, and then we'll just slide it in the back pocket here after we're done. So all my trinkets are on the back for a checklist. So then we can just stick all the trinkets in. And then the last step is to finish this seam here. So just pin it back how it was, lay it really nice and flat, pin it, and we're gonna top stitch, finishing that seam, and then back stitch. Make sure you back stitch. So now your I Spy bag is finished, and you can add your list in the back. And this pocket is also great to hold a dry erase marker, so you can check off when you find each item. And that is the I Spy bag. I hope you enjoy this project.